Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Michael
Shabbat
Lewis.
Shalom.
I'm a rabbinic student at the Hebrew Union College, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and with Cantor Steinberg, with Michael Hersher. This afternoon, I was studying in a Beit Midrash with some of my friends in rabbinical school, and we came upon a text about 10 things that were created on Friday afternoon, right before God rested on Shabbat. These 10 things were weird. They're exceptional, supernatural things whose existence couldn't be otherwise explained. The mouth of the donkey that talks to Balaam, the rainbow, the manna, Moses' staff that turns into a snake, and at the very end of the list, tongs. Now you might ask why on earth tongs would be on the list. And myself and my friends were asking exactly that question. But it's a philosophical problem. How do you create the first tongs that need metal to be dipped into metal? So they said, of course, God must have been worrying about this on Friday afternoon and frantically creating tongs before anything else happens. Now, think what you will about the tongs, but I love the image of God frantically preparing on a Shabbat afternoon. So while many of you might have been spending this afternoon getting ready for Shabbat, shopping, cleaning, cooking, or preparing, you've now entered that time, that holy time. Shabbat Shalom.
Hinei ma tov u'manayim Shevet achim gam yachad 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 Hinei ma tov u'manayim Shevet achim gam yachad.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Keep and remember a single command. This opening words from Lachadodi reflect that our Torah, even our Torah, has tension and contradiction inside of it. How did God say Shamor and Zachor in the two different versions of the Ten Commandments about Shabbat? How do we learn to figure out about the tensions in our own lives from this? We'll continue with Lachadodi, which can be found on page 138, and we'll be singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 together.
Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Yishmi'anu el ha'meichad Adonai echad U'shemo echad V'shemo tiferet v'litila Lecha Adoni likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Lecha Adoni likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha Ki mekor ha'beracha Merosh mikedem mesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila Lecha Adoni likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Lecha Adoni likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekavela Toreri, toreri, yivarech kumi ori, uri, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alai yigla, Lecha Adoni likrat
לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לקראת דודי, לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה וצהולה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי,
לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה,
בני שבת נקבלה.
Just as we have the two of Shamor v'Zachor b'Dibur Echad, so too we light two candles together to welcome in this Shabbat with the Sabbath bride in our presence. So we'll continue with Shalom Aleichem, which can be found on page 142. Share the blessing of lighting the candles, welcoming in the warmth of Shabbat to our homes.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bokem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We'll continue now with the Chatzi Kaddish, which can be found. It's our transition. The Kaddish helps us transition through different parts of the service. So now that we've welcomed Shabbat in and lit the candles, we'll be transitioning to the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu, which can be found on page 144. And I will invite you at home to please rise.
Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba, Elman yivrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon u'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv, ve'imeru, amen. Yeheshme rabba mevorach, leolam lo me'amaya.
יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה
בריחו.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
You may be seated. In a moment, we'll turn to the Ma'ariv Aravim, the blessing of the turning to the evening, which is nice in a time of year like this when the sun is out way longer than normal, to enjoy the special benefits of our long Shabbats late into the evening. Ma'ariv Aravim can be found on page 148.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim ma'ariv aravim בחוכמה פותח שערים ובתבונה משנה עיתים ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברגיע כרצונו. כולל מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור מבדיל יום מבדיל לילה מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו לילה לילה אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים. לה 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 המעריב הרבים.
Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'afta
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים ללכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם amen.
Each Shabbat, we turn our words to the words of the Micha Mocha, the song that our people sang on the other side of the sea, and our journey of freedom. The story of the Exodus is not one we just talk about on Seder, but one we mention day in and day out, every time to remind ourselves of our freedom and to remind ourselves that we too escaped bondage and left Egypt on our path to freedom in the Promised Land. We'll continue with the Micha Mocha, which can be found on page 158.
Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai Micha Mocha Nedar B'Kodesh Nora Tehilot Osef Eleh Nora Tehilot Osef Eleh Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever had. Redemption song. Malchutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam Zeili anu ve'ameru Adonai yimloch le'olam ba'ed. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever had. Redemption song, redemption song, redemption song. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. We'll continue with Hashkivenu, which can be found on page 160.
השכיבנו לשלום והעמידנו לחיים ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך סוכת שלומך ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך סוכת שלומך Give us this night time to lie in peace. May we rise to new life each day, and let there be shelter for the broken-hearted, a shelter of peace for all. And guard our going and coming home, filled with life and peace from now and ever on. And let there be shelter for the broken-hearted, a shelter of love for us all. Hashkifenu leshalom ve'hamidenu lechayim ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha sukkot shlomecha.
Over the course of Shabbat, we think about three big ideas. We think about the story of our creation, the fact that we are here in this world, in this life with Genesis. We continue thinking about the beauty of receiving Torah at Sinai. And we dream on Shabbat afternoon of a world to come, a world filled with peace, a world filled with happiness, and a world where everyone is able to be together, brothers and sisters. We continue with the words of Vishamru, honoring the beginning of this story, the beginning of creation, which can be found on page 162.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam Be'rit olam B'ni u'bein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz u'bayom hashvi'i Shabbat, Shabbat, vayinafash Shabbat, Shabbat, vayinafash V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam Be'rit olam B'ni u'bein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam oti le'olam.
In addition to creating, among other things, tongs on Friday afternoon, it's pretty great, right? I'll make you look at tongs in a completely different way.
Yes.
The tradition also teaches that one of the things that God created that we didn't quite know how to grasp were words and letters, these magical little things that help us come together to form our thoughts and our ideas as human beings. In a moment, we're going to be turning towards the Hatfilah, the Amidah, our prayer of words and letters that allow us to dive deep in ourselves, to see where we are, to check in and see what's going well, where can I do better, in what ways can I begin to think about this journey that might be coming forward with the high holidays of doing a deep internal check-in about yourself. And that can be done through the words of the Amidah. We'll be beginning with Adonai Sefatai Tiftach on page 164 and sharing the first three blessings aloud here, and then we'll turn to silent davening. You can either go with the words on the page or the words of your heart. And with that, we'll begin the Amidah. You can rise together on page 164.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Agidei Latecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdevot Bimahot, Umevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Hakol, Atah Rav Le'oshia, Morid Hatal, Mechakel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somek Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'agevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Mimit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'emanat Hayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekayeh HaKol, Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yehalelucha Sela, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
רצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי וגואלי אדוני צורי וגואלי
May the word
of
of my mouth
my mouth
and the
meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Yehiyu Ratso Imrefi Vegyo Libi Lefanecha Adonai Zuri Vegoali
Adonai
Zuri Vegoali.
We turn now to the words of the Mishaberach. The words are blessing for healing. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. Feel free to take a moment now to share the names of those who are in your hearts, who are in need of a special blessing for healing, either out loud with your loved ones with you, or in the chat on our call this evening. And the words of Mishaberach can be found on page 371.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mishaberach Imotenu mend our bodies, renew our spirits. We pray for healing for all those in need. Refuah shlema for all those in need. Refuah shlema. May the one who blessed our fathers, may the one who blessed our mothers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer. Mishaberach Avotenu Mishaberach Mekor habracha leimotenu. Bless all those in need.
Refuah shlema.
And it is my honor tonight to invite up for our Devar Torah, Steve Orkand, someone who I have had the pleasure of,
Oh, go ahead. You do yours.
oh,
No, do yours.
someone who I've had the pleasure of being able to learn from throughout my entire life here at Congregation B'nai Israel. So it's a treat for us to have Steve Orkand giving our Devar Torah tonight.
I just need to add a couple of words. I don't mean to interrupt.
Please.
Keep going. As far as I'm concerned, we can just keep going and going. I love when people, we ask that when somebody gives a drush, that they submit a little bio. And I love Steve's bio because it's just like Steve. It's very modest. It's way too short. And it doesn't touch on all the things that Steve has done for our community, for our students. You must be so proud. You've got a new rabbi that you can know that you had some influence on. And you served as president of our temple. You are a retired physician, but I have to say, once a physician, always a physician. It hurts when I do this. And and now you're on the Sacramento County's Public Health Advisory Board. And boy, do we need your heart and your neshama, your soul, and all that you have to bring to this community. So I'm looking forward to, as Michael, to hearing your words tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Julie. The title of my presentation tonight is Social Change in the Bible and Today. When Rabbi Alfie invited me to speak this evening, we were in the midst of a global pandemic, as we still are, and we had just experienced a period of unrest triggered by the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. It seemed that there was much to draw from, so I was happy to volunteer. And in preparing this, it also seemed more than coincidental that our Torah portion this evening is Parshat Pinchas in the book of Numbers, a book known for its rebellions and even for its plagues. I'd like to start with some biblical references, then focus on events of recent days. In our biblical narrative, you remember, the Israelites left Egypt and received the Torah at Mount Sinai. As they headed toward the promised land, the people became unruly and rebellious. You can hardly blame them, walking in an unknown wilderness with hundreds of thousands of people, concerned about water, eating only manna, which was pleasant enough but monotonous. They complained and they rebelled. Some of the rebellions are well known, others obscure, but there seemed to be a formula. The people complained, challenging Moses and Aaron. God punished the offenders and occasionally threatened to annihilate the people. But then Moses pleaded to God, and the most severe punishments were tempered. One of the best-known stories is in Numbers 13, when the people were preparing to cross into Canaan. Moses picked scouts, we often say spies, and instructed that they should walk the length of the land and determine before they invaded whether it was well fortified and whether the people were strong. The scouts searched the land as instructed. They came back in 40 days. 10 of the scouts reported that the land was indeed flowing in milk and honey, but that the cities were well fortified and guarded by giants. The Israelite masses were agitated by this, rose up, and demanded the return to Egypt. The remaining 2 scouts, Caleb and Joshua, gave a more hopeful report, but the people in their fear were unpersuaded. God appeared to Moses and was displeased. God threatened to annihilate the Israelites, but Moses intervened. Nonetheless, the scouts who gave a discouraging report died of plague, and the entire people were denied entry into the promised land until that generation of doubters was gone. And just a few weeks ago, Michael Lewis spoke with us about another rebellion in Numbers 16, this one fomented by Korach, Datan, and Abiram. Korach was the cousin of Moses and was also a Levite. He was jealous of Moses' leadership and Aaron's exclusive right to the priesthood. He reminded the people that God was in their midst and that they shared in his holiness, and that they should also share in decision-making. God was displeased by this challenge. The rebels were either burned by fire from heaven, swallowed live by the earth, or died of plague. I must admit that this section of Torah is difficult for me. God here is wrathful. Though God can be persuaded by Moses to spare the Israelites, it does take persuasion. This is probably not, I think, the best model for social change. Clearly, the ancient people who told these stories and those who wrote them down understood this part of God's character. Perhaps they saw the need for a strong, uncompromising leader at a time when the people were in the wilderness, a vulnerable stage in their journey. But in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Pinchas, we read of another approach to social change. It is here that we learn about the daughters of Zelophehad. Let me describe the context. 40 years had passed since the episode with the scouts, and the generation that left Egypt was largely gone. God instructed Moses and Eleazar, who was the high priest after Aaron's death, to conduct a census. This would establish just how many men over the age of 20 there were available as soldiers for the upcoming invasion. But this information was also to be used by Moses to determine how much land in the Promised Land would be appropriated to each of the tribes once the occupation was complete. Moses' formula was fairly simple. The more men in a tribe, the more land would be given. Zelophehad of the tribe of Manasseh had died in the desert, leaving 5 daughters who were single. The daughters realized that Moses' formula would not work for them. Being women, they had no right of inheritance, and hence would receive no land of their own once the tribe settled in the Promised Land. The daughters knew that they needed to speak with Moses. They constructed their argument with a great deal of wisdom. Remembering how rebellion against Moses and God was treated, they addressed that first, quoting, "Our father died in the wilderness," a point to evoke sympathy. But he was not part of Korach's rebellion. It was important to the sisters that they not be viewed as challenging Moses' authority or the wisdom of his decisions. They then stated that their father died of his own sins, which was meant to emphasize that his sins were his alone, not shared by others and not transferred to their generation. The rest of their argument was tailored to appeal to a male-oriented culture where so much depended on clan and tribe. "He left no sons," they said. Let not our father's name be lost to his clan just because he had no sons. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen." There was no drama or righteous chest beating from an injured party, nor was there desperate pleading. Rather, this was a straightforward request backed by an argument that reflected the psychology and cultural mores of that time. They chose their words carefully, working with the authorities rather than against them. So how did Moses respond to this request to change God's law? Quoting, "Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, 'The plea of Zelophehad's daughters is just. You should give them a hereditary holding among their father's kinsmen. Transfer their father's share to them. Further, speak to the Israelite people as follows. If a man dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughters. If he has no daughters, you shall assign his property to his brothers." And the text goes on to other relatives. So it appeared in this part of the book of Numbers, the book of rebellions, that the well-crafted case arguing within the system could effect change and avoid God's wrath. In more recent centuries, political philosophers would say that the daughters of Zelophehad recognized the legitimacy of the social contract and decided to work within it. I'm not sure that term social contract is familiar to you. I remember learning this theory back in the 1960s. Initially, my excitement was that I could pronounce the name of one of its early proponents, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. But then came the civil unrest of that decade, the the Watts riots, the March on Washington, riots after Martin Luther King's death, anti-war riots, and more. That's when the concept of social contract first seemed relevant. As you remember, social contract is the idea that individuals living in society have consented, either explicitly or tacitly, to surrender some of their freedoms and submit to the authority of the state in exchange for protection of the remaining rights and the maintenance of social order. Thomas Hobbes argued that without civil law and society, human life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The weaker among us would fall prey to the warriors. To avoid this, free men and women contract with each other to establish civil society, a means for ensuring law and peace. A few weeks ago, I heard a podcast by Trevor Noah, who is an African American and a political commentator. He talked about the plight of blacks in America and about the social contract. He recounted some of the many unjust killings of African Americans by police. He emotionally reminded us of the talk that only black parents have with their children, instructing them how they had to behave if they were pulled over by the police. Noah wondered, what vested interest do they have in maintaining the social contract? In real life, even people who have nothing, white, black, and brown, still play by the rules because they wish for society to work for them. But today, many blacks don't see society keeping its end of the contract. They ask, if I can't jog in my neighborhood or drive down the street because I fear I'll be killed, and if some of those who commit violence against me are the police, the ones who are supposed to protect me, why should I keep my end of the bargain? Regarding tactics, even sympathetic whites ask, but what good does it do to loot? Noah says that blacks who have nothing, who have no hope, ask, what good does it do not to loot? Let me quote President John F. Kennedy addressing the nation on the issue of civil rights on June 11, 1963. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south, where legal remedies are not at hand. Redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests which create tensions and threaten violence and threaten lives. Here we are, 57 years later, and redress is still sought in the streets, and we have seen violence. President Kennedy certainly wasn't advocating violence, and neither is Trevor Noah. But the questions he asks raise our consciousness about the frustration that comes from years of slavery, Jim Crow, institutional racism, and all the social ills that have followed. So how does the story of the daughters of Zelophehad apply? Remember, the daughters lived in a theocracy. Their contract was called the covenant, and it was between the Israelites and God. But the covenant also dictated their social behaviors, their governing structure, and many other details of their lives. The God we find in the Hebrew Bible could be vengeful and allow little dissent. But in this case, the justice of the daughter's request was clear. Moses whispered to God, and hundreds, if not thousands of years of strictly male inheritance in Semitic society was changed, at least for the Israelites. They were successful, partly because they chose to work within the system. But blacks today live in a messy democracy where they are the minority. It can be argued that they have tried working within the system, but they have found that the system has been rigged against them. Many have marched peacefully, following the model of Dr. Martin Luther King. But for those most impatient, those subject to the most brutality directed against them, is there only recourse to smash police cars? Is there only recourse Is this their only means of redress? Black slaves were first brought to the shores of North America 400 years ago. Many hoped that the election of Barack Obama in 2008 signified the beginning of a post-racial America. That, of course, was fanciful thinking. Racism is deeply rooted in our land, in our history, in our culture, our institutions, and our psyches. The mentality of the slave master is still in our midst. As a second-generation American Jew, relatively new to this land, it can be argued that I have had little to do with African American history, but that would be beside the point. Living here for over 70 years, believing in the social contract, benefiting as I have from white privilege, I bear some responsibility for the social injustice around me. I know I can't solve the problems that spring from the troubled past of this nation, but in the spirit of Tikkun Olam, I need to work with our Black brothers and sisters to make social change possible without revolution. Shabbat Shalom.
Overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Together we'll work for justice. Together we'll work for justice. Together we'll work for justice. Together we'll work for justice someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Black, brown, and white together. Black, brown, and white together. Black, brown, and white together. Black, brown, and white together someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I know I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll conquer fear and hate. We'll conquer fear and hate. We'll conquer fear and hate. We'll conquer fear and hate someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I know I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Shkoch. Steve, thank you for those wonderful words and the beautiful message about Benot Zelophehad, the daughters of Zelophehad, and how it is relevant in so many ways to our lives today. So thank you for sharing those beautiful words. Just have a few announcements for everyone before we conclude our service this evening. First, we're going to have an oneg afterwards. So you can find the Zoom link. It'll be a Zoom oneg on the website, and I believe it's in the chat box as well. Registration for camp can be found online. Camp registration is open. And tomorrow, there are a whole host of Zoom activities. There's Torah study from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. There is a mini minyan for the kids at 10:30 a.m. And there's a meditation Shabbat at 11 a.m. And with that, we will begin to conclude our service this evening with the Aleinu. Please rise. You can turn to page 586 for the words of the Aleinu.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem,
וגור עלינו ככל
hamonam, va'anachnu korlim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malachei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Shechunotei shamayim v'yosed haaretz, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad.
You can be seated.
Our thoughts now turn towards loved ones who are no longer with us. And it is with great sadness that we remember the recent passing of Mac Hall, the beloved father of Jeffrey Rosenhall, father-in-law of Laurel Rosenhall and grandfather of Isaiah and Eliana Rosenhall. And sadly, we also remember the recent passing of Sheila Weckstein, beloved mother of Julie, Liz, and Allison Weckstein, mother-in-law of Jane Ann Cooper, Ashley Furman, and Richard Liu, beloved grandmother of David Furman, Patrick Liu, and Michelle Liu. And we remember with sadness the recent passing of Todd Solomon, the beloved cousin of Doris Patel Morris and Lainey and Greg Josephson. And sadly, we remember the recent passing of Judith Weinreb DeRubio, beloved daughter of Eileen Weinreb, wife of Mike DeRubio, sister of Rachel Weinreb and Deborah Jacobson, sister-in-law of Tom Jacobson, aunt of Abby and Hannah Archibald and Hillary Jacobson. Zichronam livracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. We also remember loved ones who passed away at this time in years past. And we remember Richard Archibald, Martha Bremson Arnold, Elizabeth Austin, Albert Bendahan, Harold Harry Bremson, Ida Mintz Cohen, Stella Fleischman Cohen, Marie Cruzen, Lester Darvin, Jack Yankel Dlugich, Yetta Lee Dorfman, Alice Dukor, Ruth Ann Edelstein, Dalton Feldstein, Evelyn Fisher, Sidney Goldberg, Donald Goldstein, Henry Haas, Leonard Herscher, Elizabeth Hurwitz, Chazan Karl Nalawai Jr., Marcia Koretsky, Erwin Krasno, Aaron Laws, Stracy Laws, Benjamin Levy, Artis Miller, Victoria Plow, Sydney Rose, Dalman Rudnick, Sarah Saracen, Iris Siegel, Eugene Sosnick, Louis Stahl, Harry Stern, Nadine Tochterman, Joe Vasquez, Rebecca Warhoftik, Moses Warhoftik, Sarah Wong, and Faye Zubin. If there are names of loved ones that you're saying Kaddish for tonight, I invite you to please say those names out loud or to share their names and who they were to you in the chat. If you're saying Kaddish tonight, I invite you to please rise so that the congregation can join me in these words of comfort. Hamakom yenechem etchem betoch sha'ar avalei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. We rise as a community to remember those who have gone before us as we participate together in the Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach leolam lomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. As together we say,
Amen.
Just want to thank everyone for this service tonight. Thank you, Cantor Steinberg, for being wonderful as always, and for Michael, and for Steve Workham for providing our Dvar Torah, and for Ryan, who makes everything happen, and who is celebrating a big birthday this weekend. So happy birthday to Ryan.
And I understand that you, Michael, are celebrating a big birthday tonight with us.
There might be a couple birthdays in the house tonight.
Yes,
So.
so thank you for sharing your birthday with us. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom. And thank you for being with us. Go ahead.
Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach.
I think nowadays we need to celebrate every moment worth celebrating.
Amen.
And birthdays for sure are.
Od
So
ve'od.
Thank you.
Mazel tov to you both. We will conclude our service, our closing song, with Ani ve'ata, you and I. You and I will change the world. Can be found on page 652. Ani ve'ata neshane et ha'olam. Ani ve'ata az yavo kvar kulam. Amru et ze kodem lefanai ze lo meshane. Ani ve'ata neshane et ha'olam. התחלה. יהיה לנו רע, אין דבר, זה לא נורא. אמרו את זה קודם, לפניי זה לא משנה. אני ואתה נשנה את העולם. שבת שלום.
Shabbat
Shalom.
shalom.